Hello and welcome to Awkward Family Conversations, where we try to help millennials and Gen Z slash Zoomers figure all of this out, because I sure don't have it figured out. I'm here with my dad, Rhett, who doesn't think that my cat counts as a child. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Ed. Pretty sure that basically almost everyone would agree that pets are different than children. So,
No,
doesn't
she's
mean
my
they're not members of the family. Just means it's
baby.
a little different thing. So,
She's my baby. I'm a single mother.
it's your pet. Anyway, hello, Ed. I am joined by my younger daughter, Addie, who is celebrating 1 year of Claire. She got Claire, her pet cat, a year ago today, and fittingly, I suppose it is Mother's Day from Addie's perspective. That was a year ago today she got Claire. So our audio intern, Claire the cat, has been with her current home now for a year.
Happy Gotcha Day, baby.
There she is. If you're on video, you can see her very excited to have Addie squeezing her, rubbing her, and scratching her face.
And if you're on audio, you can hear her purring.
Yeah. Excellent. So what's our topic that we're going to enlighten our vast audience today?
Today is on a topic I know nothing about. That is, what should I do if I'm burning out at work?
Burning out at work, yes. I don't know that I would ever say I felt burned out. I mean, I felt burned out at times, but I don't know if it's ever been about work. But yeah, fairly common problem, actually. The work is pretty demanding and a lot of people like to give it their all. And sometimes you can redline for a little bit too long and run the risk of burning out. So are you burning out at your job, Ed?
I've been burnt out at my
Have
job.
you? And what gives you the most stress at your job?
Oh man. Um, Honestly, the thing that it always comes back to is the fact that a lot of responsibility falls on me.
Hmm.
Um, Despite the fact that I have been a vet assistant for less than a year.
Yeah,
Um, so responsibility that should go to either managers or vet techs who have been techs and are licensed, unlike me, for
yeah.
multiple years, fall on me becomes very difficult because I am neither qualified or nor educated nor capable of handling that amount of stress.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the amount of stress, I mean, they obviously feel comfortable having you do tasks that maybe you don't feel quite comfortable.
No, and that's how you get bit by a cat and end up in the hospital.
Yes,
I
well,
did
that's true.
recently.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. And that's, yeah, I mean, there's actually quite a few different sort of causes that people cite as reasons for burning out at work. A lot of them are, I mean, when you think about burnout and, um, there's kind of there's a physical component to it, definitely. But there's also emotional and even mental, intellectual type dimensions as well. And, as you think
That's
about your emotions, it's, how you feel about yourself and how you feel about others. And there's a lot of,
that's the worst that I've felt with work, for sure, is definitely that emotional commitment. Especially recently, I realized that if I'm not at work, I'm with my friends or with my boyfriend. I'm not really alone ever recently. And so I've been putting all of that alone time on work and putting all of my identity into my work identity, which means that when something goes wrong at work or if I'm not able to go to work for some reason, I take it very, very hard, which is not a healthy relationship to have to your career.
yeah, I think, and we'll talk a little bit about relationships. Your relationship to your work is really not that much different than your relationships to anything else in your life. And you want those to be healthy, productive relationships, and that hallmarks of, and we've talked about this in some of our, in season 2, we talked a lot about this, relationships with yourself and with others. And, hallmarks of healthy relationships really are open, honest communication, sense of balance that you're getting as much as you're giving. There's a kindness to it, that you assume good intentions, and those assumptions are also granted to you. At times at work, sometimes we feel like we don't communicate openly and honestly, or if we are, we're not getting that back because work. We've talked about kind of the emotional distance that in a professional environment, there's a certain amount of emotional distance because it's just not appropriate to share everything in a workspace because you're really kind of all together around a very specific purpose. And you don't need to be you don't have to bring your entire self to that relationship, but often people feel like they do. And even if you don't feel that way, maybe your boss or some of your coworkers feel that way. And so they're overstepping boundaries. So balance gets out of whack. You don't get open and honest communications because people are worried about how this is going to look or how things might fit. So, and there's often a lot of times with frustration builds and when things go wrong and people don't assume kindness, and they're not kind. They don't assume good intentions. They assume that you're trying to screw things up, or you assume that somebody else is purposely affecting you. And so the workplace can be rife with these sorts of disconnects that are these hallmarks of a healthy relationship. And so it's not unusual for people to not have a great relationship with their work. And then there's these things that bring that can cause burnout. And when we talk about burnout, it's not just a feeling of being tired and fatigued. It's not just a feeling of being unappreciated or just can't generate energy or anything. I mean, there's a lot of different dimensions to burnout. But the main sources of burnout, now our 2 minutes of internet research this week, the Mayo Clinic has a great section on their website, mayoclinic.org, about job burnout. And also found some good information at thebalancedcareers.com. But basically, the things that cause burnout are not all that surprising. Things like lack of control, and that's again sort of tied to how you in your work relationship. How much control can you exert? If you're always responding, then you don't have an ability to affect what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. That can lead to a lot of frustration, and frustration leads to stress, and that can lead to burnout if you don't find a way to manage that kind of stress. But your inability to influence decisions that affect your job, so your schedule, your work assignments, the workload. You talk about being asked to do a whole lot more than maybe reasonable. If you don't have the resources that you need to do your work, you can feel frustrated, and that can definitely lead to burnout. And I think that's a pretty common one. Unclear, lack of clarity is another good one, is another thing that will cause you burnout. If you don't know what you're striving for, if you don't know what you're authorized to do and not authorized to do, and you don't know what's expected of you, that can lead to a lot of anxiety, which again leads to stress, which leads to burnout. You're not going to feel very comfortable at work if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. Or in your case, if you feel overmatched, that they're asking you to do things that you're not really confident enough to do it. And this is part of this, maybe a dysfunctional workplace. You get these dynamics, these interpersonal dynamics, or these job dynamics where your boss is maybe not listening to you, not being very reasonable, bullying you, undermining you. You might have colleagues that are backstabbing and talking about you behind the back, which is changing, the workplace. Those kind of things can really get old fast, and can again lead to a lot of that stress, that uncertainty, that sense of you've always got to watch your back, that you can't relax and can't be yourself, can't focus on your job, gets in the way, and that extra stress can lead to burnout for sure. If you've got monotonous or chaotic things that you have to do, to get through a day of work, you have to bring consistent amount of energy. And a lot of times that extra workload, that undefined work, or when things are absolutely crazy, you have to elevate your energy level. And you can't do that on it's just like you can't sprint. You can't sprint a marathon, right? And, oftentimes those kind of extremes of we got to get all this work done, and we got to, I had a boss that used to talk about, if you got too much on your plate, eat faster. And it was kind of like, well, that's one way to resolve the issue. But, maybe the way to think about this too is do I have an appropriate amount on my plate? Am I eating fast? Because if you're asking me to eat faster consistently, that's going to lead to burnout, because I just, there's a certain level of performance that I can exhibit, and then anything after that's going to put me into the red zone, which I can do for a little bit. But if it's a consistent time, if it's always, you're always asking me to eat faster, that's going to be a problem. Social support is another thing. If you don't feel supported, if you feel like you don't have anywhere to go to kind of offload stress, if you're isolated at all, either at work or in your personal life, you can have things in your personal life that create a need for a lot of energy that you then don't have available to you when you go to your job. And because that energy isn't available to you at your job, you burn out faster, because you just don't have that reservoir of energy to draw on. And then finally, what you were just talking about, the work-life imbalance, the fact that, you're never by yourself. You don't have any time to sort of just be with yourself and recharge without having to interact with somebody. And everybody needs a different amount of time to do that. But that work-life imbalance, where too much of your time and energy is spent thinking about working, that can lead to burnout as well, when you don't have something to balance it. And this gets back to that relationship with work. Balance is an important part of any relationship. And you need to be able to step away and kind of come back with it with fresh eyes. That's always really productive. And if you're not being able to do that, if you don't have any space in your life to kind of recharge, that can definitely lead to burnout. And finally, one I think that is often overlooked is boredom. Boredom is draining. If you're not engaged with what you do, if you're not interested in what you're doing at work, it can be really, it can just sap a lot of energy. And that by its, and that alone can create the sense of burnout that, I'm just so done with my job because it's just too easy for me and I'm just bored. So does any of that resonate with you? Are you feeling any of that, or have you felt anything like any of these in the past?
Everything except for boredom. Definitely not bored with my job. It definitely keeps it interesting every day. But as a lack of control, yes, I have no control over the scheduling, and I disagree with a lot of the decisions that are made. Unclear job expectations. Both of my managers are on vacation right now for the third time in 5 weeks.
Okay.
Which means that me and a couple other techs who have been there for longer than 6 months, which is the longest anybody's been there, are in charge of managerial duties, which is insane. Dysfunctional workplace dynamics, I feel like that's pretty dysfunctional. So that kind of sums up that. Extremes of activity, it's chaotic 100% of the time. There's never a slow day. It's always something insane. And a lack of social support, it's the personal life thing, is that because it's so chaotic all the time, when someone gets sick, there's not a compassionate response to it. It's very much oh my God, why is this person calling out? So when I've had to call out, I feel like I'm letting everyone down, despite the fact that I literally can't come to work because I can't open my eyes. I have a migraine and I can't see anything. And then work-life imbalance, same thing. I'm working overtime. I'm staying an hour after my shift ends. I'm working 13-hour shifts because we're not scheduling enough people and I don't have any time for myself. So really up until boredom, that sums up my job.
So it sounds like you're at risk of burnout if you're not already there.
I am fully there.
Yeah, well, that's and that's not a pleasant
Actually, I think
place.
we're finally bouncing back. Around the time when we made the schedule for this season, I was fully there, but I've found ways to deal with some of it.
Oh, well, let's talk about that then. So we've talked about your relationship to work, but I mean, what are some of the things that you've found to be effective?
The thing that I've found to be most effective is coming back to the why of it all. The why do I do my job? Why am I here? And the why is really because patient care. I want to take care of animals. I want them to feel good. So when I am able to let go of the fact that it's not my problem if we're behind schedule, it's not my problem If the doctors aren't able to make their appointments run on time, it's not my problem. If we don't have enough techs, it's not my problem if someone is sick. That sucks for them and I feel bad for them, but it's not my job if their job doesn't get done that day. It doesn't fall to me. It's not my problem. And I can focus on like taking care of the dogs and cats that I see that day. That's what makes me really like able to come back and enjoy my job again, because that's why I got there in the first place. So when I'm not feeling like I'm being pulled in 14 different directions and like because the lab person called out, now I have to do the doctor I'm with and also the lab. And instead just be like, no, I'm still just assigned to this doctor. And the fact that the lab person isn't here today means that lab isn't going to get done today, and that sucks.
Yeah, so you find, it sounds like you've found a lot of your answer and a lot of your response in the purpose of the work.
Yeah.
You've found a job that you feel very strongly about and strongly aligns with your own purpose, and you're finding resolution in the in that purpose, and we're sort of recognizing, okay, I'm going to handle this burnout. I'm going to handle this crushing sense of, oh my God, I got to get out of here, just by reminding myself, hey, I'm doing this for a reason, and let me reset my behaviors, or at least my expectations around my job back to something that I can manage a little bit better, reduce the stress that I'm feeling that's just kind of accumulating because of all the things we've already talked about. And you've made that your answer. You've looked back to the purpose, found your purpose, reasserted your purpose, and then that's helped you find your footing. Is that fair to say? Good.
Indeed.
Good.
But my question for you is, how do I tell if I'm burnt out or just tired?
Well, yeah. So we talked a little bit ago about the, there's certainly fatigue, right? I mean, especially for somebody like you, I mean, you're on your feet 12, 13 hours on your shift. You've got shifts several days in a row. And so, that's physically demanding. And, you're talking about the chaotic work environment. So, you're exerting a lot of mental energy as well as physical energy, and that's going to deplete you. So, after doing a few days in a row, you're going to be tired. I think that, and to be expected, I think there's a couple ways to think about this. If you're able to bounce back within a couple of days with a couple of days rest, it's probably just fatigue, right? I mean, if you're able to sleep in a little bit, get out and do some, some things for you, some self-care, and then be able to come back and tackle your job with vigor and interest and energy, then that's probably, you were probably just feeling fatigued. But I think if, we talked earlier that, burnout can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. Physically, it can certainly manifest itself physically. But that's maybe where you got to get confused about fatigue. But there's also mental and emotional components to burnout that aren't true of fatigue. I mean, you might be a little short-tempered, but again, if you can get a couple of days rest and a couple of days break from your routine and your job, and come back and feel pretty good about it, then that's probably you're just probably tired. You were just depleted and you needed to recharge your stores of energy. But if you're burned out, that means that something bigger is going on. And so, as you think about some of the emotional hallmarks or triggers or emotional flags, if you will, are you cynical or critical at work, and does that kind of continue? In other words, you get your rest, you come back, but you're still kind of surly and bitter, and you don't assume good intentions on your part of your colleagues or your managers and supervisors or even your clients. That you're you feel like everybody's just out to you're not finding the positive, you're not finding the purpose, and that's not really helping you. If you're irritable or impatient on a regular basis, where you that becomes sort of your norm, that's a big red flag. Are you finding it hard to concentrate, when you're there? Again, sort of that boredom thing, right? I mean, it's really, if you're not fully engaged and you're burned out, you just can't quite, do what you need to do. And you're satisfied, your achievements, the things that you do aren't bringing you the usual sense of accomplishment or fulfillment. Those are all kind of these emotional things to pay attention to, these markers, these emotional markers where you're just not. And again, if everybody goes through these things once in a while, but if this becomes sort of the norm when you're at work, that's probably a good time to start to think about, okay, I'm feeling like this is a burnout thing. And there's the physical side of it too. I mean, just the fact that you're always tired, you can't ever get caught up. If that's the case, it's probably something more going on than just being tired. If you just don't have the energy when you're going into work. I mean, we go into work, ideally you found a job that you like, that aligns with your purpose, and with a company or an organization that you are really aligned with. And so you should feel you should be energized going into work, before the day starts. You should be excited and looking forward to the day. And if you're not, this was one of the things I said I didn't really burn out at the job. I got bored. And one of the things I noticed is that I just kept going into work later and later and later. And I'd get up at the same time in the morning, but I'd find other things to do. Whereas before I was looking forward to getting into work and getting in there and tackling the day. And I just started putting it off. And it didn't get to be a lot, but over the course of 5, 6, 7 years, I was going in a half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour later than I had been on a consistent basis. And that's a really good tell too, that you just can't get yourself going to work, and that your energy lags. Right? I mean, to be able to bring to work effectively, you got to bring energy every day, and if that's not available to you, that's a good sign. And again, consistently available. We all have days here and there, but if you happen to notice that for several weeks in a row, several months in a row, you just can't bring yourself to care, or you can't bring that energy to get your work done. That's a physical manifestation where you're just low energy all the time. That could be an indication of burnout. Sure. Things like, you're overeating, or you're using drugs or alcohol, caffeine. These are all things that, if your behavior in any using any of those things changes, so that you're doing more of it, you're eating more or less or a lot less, you just can't seem to care about food, drugs and alcohol, maybe you're drinking more, not at work necessarily, but at night when you go home, maybe you're having an extra glass of wine or an extra beer, and consistently over time you start to drink more, start using drugs more than you have. Sleep, monitor your sleep. I mean, if you start sleeping a lot, that could be an indication of depression. If you stop thinking, if you're sleep less, that could be a real indication that your mind is just consumed and stresses up, and that can lead to burnout. So, pay attention to what's that?
Said mania.
Yeah, I mean, pay attention to your physical changes and to changes in your physical side, but don't, it's also, burnout is also emotional. It's also that you're spinning your wheels and things are just not in sync. And so, fatigue is certainly something we all are dealing with, and you will continue to do that. And if you're really putting in a lot of energy and a lot of effort at work, you should be tired. But you should be able to bounce back with a couple of days rest, whether it's the weekend or whether you get a couple of days here and there, and you're able to right yourself, and then you're back at it. You're probably not burned out. But if that doesn't do it for you, then start looking a little deeper at some of these other things and start to say, okay, how am I feeling about my work or my coworkers and myself? How do I feel about myself? Am I still self-confident? Do I still think of myself as doing a good job? How am I feeling about just going to work in the morning? How do I feel about, am I irritable? Am I always annoyed at work? I mean, these are things that can be real good indicators of whether or not you're feeling burned out when you're at work.
Cool. But then on that note, according to your 2 minutes of internet research, what do you do if you are burnt out? Like, how do you fix that?
Yeah, there's no real sort of wave your magic wand and make it happen kind of thing. There's kind of 2 steps. The first is you got to, offload the stress you're currently feeling. You're burned out because you've been pushing too hard. either yourself or other people have been pushing you too hard, and you've been consistently in deficit mode around your energy, and it's not working for you. You're out. So you've got to offload the stress that has kind of created the current condition, and then longer term, you've got to kind of change the environment so this doesn't happen again. Maybe you're burned out because there was a massive project and you got it all done, and so you're just like, all right, I'm done. I just need to take some time and get my mind back, and I can come. And that kind of thing is just, then if it really is just about projects and getting this thing done, then, okay, that's probably not going to recur. But most burnout comes because there's just kind of no end in sight, that it's just an ongoing grind, and it's just wearing you down. And so how do you change that environment so that, you're where you are today, if you're feeling stressed and you're feeling burned out? How do you, what do you need to do to keep from finding yourself in this position in another, 2 weeks, 2 months, at the end of the year, whatever it is, once you've offloaded the stress in the interim. So, I think, this kind of going simplest to hardest. Look at your body, look at your physical thing. And we've talked about this, I think, a lot. And I think it was season 2. We talked about, the 3 cornerstones, or the three legs of the stool for health are, sleep, exercise. What was the third? Sleep, exercise, and diet, nutrition. Yeah. So, start with sleep. If you're tired and you're worn out and you're feeling burned out, try to get a little bit more sleep. And again, don't go to bed and stay in bed all the time. You don't want to be, screwed up that way, but try to get your 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep every night consistently. Set your habits, set your intentions, and then do that. Get your exercise is one of the best ways and the healthiest ways to kind of disperse all of that energy that comes from stress and anxiety and frustration and all those things that build up, those emotions that build up and cause burnout. Offload those just dissipate those by going for a walk, or going for a run, or going for a swim, or a bike ride, or play.
Or literally yoga, which is designed for this specific purpose.
Yeah, yoga. Meditation. There's Tai Chi. There's lots of sort of like breathing and just relaxation types things. So start with your sleep, your exercise. Look at your diet. Have you been eating well enough? Are you fueling yourself in a healthy way? Or been eating a lot of fast food? Or you've been skipping meals? I mean, try to again sort of reset the body physically by sleep, by exercise, by nutrition. And that can go a long way to offloading the stress that you currently feel. Look for relaxing activities that you can do. One of the things that I like is pottery. I do ceramics, and I'm a very mediocre at best potter, but it's tremendously relaxing. And I spend most of my day kind of between my ears thinking of stuff. And when I'm throwing clay, when I'm throwing pots, it's very physical, and there's something about the clay being earth, and trying to create something here. So there's a creative element, but it's a physically creative element, and it's a great counterpoint to the intellectual and mental energy I expend all day. And so a relaxing activity like that, or as we talked about, yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, some of these other things that people do to get to kind of create to create relaxation are great things to do. So, once you've kind of reset your body, then try to give your mind a break, or try to give your mind a break from what it's currently doing. I mean, if you're spending all day, throwing around bales of hay, maybe you want to read or engage your mind, because your body has been doing all the heavy lifting, so to speak, in those kind of situations. And so maybe find something mental for, to challenge your mind, where you might have more energy than if you got up and decided, well, I'm going to play basketball after throwing bales of hay around a warehouse all day. I'm going to do something equally challenging physically. That's, maybe you're just not going to have the physical energy, but you'll probably have the mental energy to tackle something that'll take you away from, the job that's burning you out. kind of next up on the hard, easy to hard scale would be to seek support. One of the things we talked about is a lack of support can create burnout. But you've got colleagues, you got friends, you got family members, life partners. There's a lot of people that most of us can access and share. And when you're doing that, remember back to your healthy relationships, keeping in balance. It's not going to be you always just offloading your stress. You have to be willing in those relationships to help the other people manage their lives as well. But that can be really satisfying and a great way to offload. And absent any friends or colleagues that you can do it, maybe a counselor or therapist, somebody that you can talk to about the stress. Talking about something is a tremendous release, and finding people to talk with about it, finding that support network can feel very validating, and can feel helpful. When you're feeling this job burnout, reach out to people around you. Mindfulness is another thing that they talk about on the 2 minutes of internet research talking about mindfulness. And I have a hard time with mindfulness just in general, because it requires concentration and staying in the moment. And that's hard for me. But, mindfulness is just being aware of your body in this time and what you're doing. And with doing it without judgment, just kind of forgetting about what's coming, forget about what's past, just focus on what's happening in the moment. I think there was a psychologist, psychiatrist, sociologist, I don't know, a guy named Csikszentmihalyi, and he studied what he called flow. And I believe, as far as I understand it, his idea is that flow happens when the demands of your task exactly meet the energy and competence that you have to give to that task. So there's no extra energy or capacity left over, and there's nothing that you're in deficit to. So when you have that exact match, then all of your resources are fully consumed without being, and the demands of the task are equal to those resources. And when you're in that flow, you lose track of time because you don't have any extra resources to keep track of time. You have stress because you're able to do the job that you need to do, or the task that you need to do fully. So you don't feel any anxiety or any frustration because you're actually able to do it. But on those rare occasions when you hit flow, that's kind of what we're seeking when we're talking about mindfulness, or at least that's the way I feel when I talk about mindfulness, is we're looking for those flow moments where you're fully invested in what you're doing. You're not overtaxed. You're not, demands are not beyond what you can do, but you don't have any extra energy or any extra attention to draw you, to distract you or pull you away from what you're trying to do. And so, that if we can find those flow moments, those are great. And they've happened a few times in my life, and they probably happened a few times in yours already too. Where you're just not aware of time passing. You're not aware of anything other than just what you're working on. And mindfulness, to me, I think that's where we're trying to get to too, is that you're just aware of what's happening around you. You're aware of the task that you're engaged in, and you're not sweating what's already happened or what might happen going forward. So trying to stay present, stay in the moment. That's a good way to kind of navigate and manage kind of this burnout, so that you're not adding to the additional stress. And then finally, and this is some of the hardest things to do, is kind of evaluate your options. I mean, if your job is creating all this extra stress that's causing you all kinds of trouble, and we're talking, we want to have a healthy relationship with our work, that means we need some open and honest communication. And so we need to engage our managers, our leaders, the bosses. We need to engage our colleagues, probably talk to them about, hey, this is not working for me. I'm burned out, and here's why I think I'm burned out. What can we do about this? Is there an opportunity to change my work environment? Can I stay home 2 days a week instead of having to come in? Can I work at a different office? Can I work on a different floor, at a different desk? in other words, can I change things up around me that, might give me a better work experience so that I'm not feeling, so I'm not feeling ground down. What, what can how can we work? How can the company get what it needs and I get what I need? Let's have a conversation about that. And that can be a hard conversation to start. Hopefully you've got a good relationship with your, with your work, which means your boss and your colleagues, that you can talk about these things in a candid way and just say, hey, this is what's going on with me. What can we change? And if you don't get satisfaction there, then you really do have to think about changing your work situation, finding a different company, finding a different organization, maybe, and moving on, because burnout is a real thing, and it's certainly serious too. I mean, it can really be. It's not a fun place. It's living in burnout is not a fun place to live, and you're not going to be able to do that and stay healthy for a lot of for indefinitely. You can live there a little bit, but you can visit there a little bit, but if you're living there all the time, that's a tough place to live and be healthy and be happy, which is of course what we want to do in our lives. And so, so kind of reset yourself physically, trying to offload stress by doing relaxing activities, finding a support network. Aim to sort of not add stress by thinking about past or future, but just kind of stay in the moment. But then also at the end, you really want to make sure that you're fully communicating with your, with your work about what's going on with you, and then start to explore maybe some changes. And those changes could come with your current organization, if you've got an organization that's willing to work with you. Or it might not be with you. I mean, it may not be with the same organization. You might need to say, you know what, I need to change where I do this work. Or maybe I just need to change the work. And if there's no place for me to go in my current organization, then, I'm going to need to find a different place to do this. And, again, you don't need to be fully disclosing when you're talking to your work about that second part. You can tell them, explain your frustrations or explain your situation, explore opportunities, and if they're not able to accommodate everything that you need, then you can start doing work on the, you start looking for work on the QT. And we can go back to season 1 and look at our episodes about how do you find a job when you're working for a, when you're already working. And again, you want to be honest, but you don't have to be fully candid until you find what you need. But I think those are, when you talk about handling the burnout, what do you do once you sort of reach that burnout stage? I think that's those are places to start, and actually probably kind of sum up what's really available. Does that make sense?
It does. And I have one note to add on the mindfulness thing. Mindfulness does not come first. Before mindfulness, you kind of have to have a regular practice of meditation or yoga or something similar, where you are regularly spending time checking in with your body, because spending time dedicated alone, knowing exactly what you're feeling, is the only way you're able to do it while you're also doing something else. If you try to jump right in to, okay, I'm going to be mindful of what I'm doing while you're trying to do something else, and you've never done any sort of meditation activity, you're not going to successfully do it. So what I found with mindfulness, and why that's been a successful technique for me, is because I have a history of practicing meditation and practicing yoga, and I know what it's like to check in with my body. So I'm able to kind of like do a shortened version of that, and kind of find that mindful presence. But for someone who's never done it before, that's not necessarily going to work.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you need a baseline and some experience kind of working through that before you're going to be able to make that effective. And that makes sense. I mean, we're
jumping straight into saying like, oh, I'm going to be mindful of what I'm doing is not necessarily the most productive way of doing it. If you really want to find a healthy relationship to mindfulness, the best way to do it is to go with meditation or yoga or something like that. That will help you build that pathway already, so you can access it and you don't have to be like forging a new pathway while you're trying to create a healthy relationship to your work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's good advice. Yeah, if you haven't done, if you haven't done that sort of meditation, mindfulness work, don't expect to be good at it right off the bat. I mean, one of the great things in life is, one of the great gifts that you can have is to sort of recognize that you're going to have the courage to do something you're going to suck at for a while before you get good at it, because it just takes practice to do anything well. And that includes meditation, includes yoga, it includes your relationship with, being aware of these things. And so I think that, yeah, that's fair. I think that's absolutely right. But don't let it stop you from doing it. Start that. I mean, if you're in a place where you're burned out from your job and you don't have an established practice of mindfulness, you can still start that. Just know that it's going to take you a little bit longer for that to be an effective tool for you to use.
Practice also doesn't necessarily mean, because like practicing meditation is what you need to do in order to be able to meditate. Practice does not mean 45-minute sessions. It means 5-minute sessions the first time you try, because the first couple times you meditate are probably going to be like a couple seconds of being in a meditative state, and then you're going to snap out of it because you're not used to it. So practice is not some like thing that you have to dedicate your 10,000 hours to be able to do mindfulness. You can be mindful and experiment with mindfulness after a couple days of a couple minute sessions. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. But you can't start at mindfulness, is basically what I'm trying to say. Your starting point is just plain old meditation, where you are being mindful without something else going on. And then bringing mindfulness into your work life is the second step of that. You can't be mindful of what you're doing at work and how you feel about it if you're not already mindful of what you're doing when you're doing nothing.
Interesting. Good. Yeah. And that makes sense to me. And just sort of be present, practice being present, which is kind of what meditation, I think, is all about. And there's meditative practices like yoga and Tai Chi where you're moving your body.
And those are easier to get in touch with, especially if meditation is a really, really foreign concept to you. It is easier to do something like Tai Chi or yoga because it's very easy to be like, oh, I can tell that I'm present because my arms hurt. And then instead of focusing on like clear your mind, all you're thinking about is like, my arms are putting a lot of weight on them right now. And that's
concentrate
kind of
on the pose.
that's mindfulness, is if the only thing you're thinking about is that moment, all of the weight that's in your arms, you're being mindful of your arms. So then carrying that idea through helps. And I know the first couple like weeks that I did yoga for, I was like in a position thinking about what I had to do next, about a paper I had to write or something. And that's not mindfulness. But then in the weeks where I was able to be like focusing on how dorky I sounded when I exhaled, I was like, oh, I'm here now.
Yeah. Focus on form, focus on breathing, focus on, these are all just techniques to kind of get you out of your own head and sort of break that, that flow.
That doesn't start at work. That has to start outside of work, and you can bring that technique into work with you.
It's a lifestyle or a life.
Exactly.
It's a life.
I see a lot of things being about like, oh, just be mindful and your problems will be solved. And it's like, well, it's not that easy.
No, nothing worth doing ever is.
Being burnt out at work is not a personal shortcoming.
Yeah. No, it isn't. It's just, it's a result of, the environment. It's a result of where you are in your life. It's a result of what you're being asked to do and what you want to do, what you're capable of doing, what else is happening, how you're dividing your energy up. I mean, burnout happens. And you can burn out on a lot of different things. It's not just your job, but since our season 3 is about a relationship with work here, that's the context we're putting it in. But the techniques for handling burnout, whatever the source, are pretty much the same. Let's try to take care of yourself physically, take care of yourself emotionally, and then try to figure out how you can stop this thing from happening to you again. Because as we said, you can visit burnout and still be a happy, productive person, but you can't live there and be a happy, productive person for long. And, it is something that you need to address and that you need to, that you need to move on from. So I think did we get all the questions answered? Did we?
I think we did. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So that's what we've got. No follow-up items, I don't think. Mm-mm. And no swearing again today. So no money going, no money changing hands. So what are we going to talk about next week, which I think is our last
it is our season finale. 3. Yep, season 3 finale is next week, which is when should I leave a job or employer? So basically your sequel to this episode. Uh,
Yeah,
I've
the
tried all the
discussion with
things
your
that I
boss
can
did.
control. When is it done?
Yeah, when your discussion with your boss doesn't yield what you want, how do you know that? Okay, I think we can put something together for that. That sounds great.
I think we can. I think our 2 minutes of let me rephrase this. I think your 2 minutes of internet research
Yes.
will yield some answers on that, because I'm certainly not good at it.
All right.
But in the meantime, you can find us on awkwardfamilyconversations.com, on Twitter at awkwardfamilyc1, on YouTube or Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, wherever you like to listen at Awkward Family Conversations. YouTube, of course, has the video version, usually featuring the lovely audio intern who is currently licking her toes over in the corner, and it looks weird because she's a little chonky.
She's an odd
So
thing.
if you want to see the audio intern, check us out on YouTube. If you want to hear the audio intern, just listen to us. And if you just want to keep up with what we're up to, you can check us out on Facebook at Awkward Family Conversations. In the meantime, let us know what you think. Keep the questions and suggestions coming, either via comments, DMs, or of course, personal text messages. That is, most of our listeners are family friends. So we
Exactly.
will see you next week. I love you, Dad.
I love you, Ed. And yeah, to our listeners, if there's any topics you'd like us to address, by all means, let us know. And we're open to anything. So we can expand.
Talk about it all. Let me rephrase this. There is one topic I want nobody to ask any questions about, and that specific topic is naked time.
Naked
So
time.
if you could all asking any questions about that and 20 episodes about naked time, thank you. Appreciate y'all.
I think we need a special season on naked time. I think that's what we need. So.
No, we sure don't.
All right, Addie. Well, I love you, and I'll talk to you next week.
All right. I love you, Dad. I'll talk to you next week.
Bye.